Hi, my name's Kait Boyle. I'm a professional ultra-endurance mountain biker, world champion, bike packer, trails advocate, and co-founder of Bikepacking Roots. I lived in Arizona from 2007 to 2018 while attending and teaching at Prescott College. During that time, I fell in love with the Arizona landscape and the Arizona Trail. Many people hold places as symbols of significant moments or chapters in their life. For me, Picket Post is one of those places. Picket Post marked the beginning of my bikepacking career when I rode through there on my first single track bikepacking trip in 2011 on my steel single speed. In 2015, I won my first ultra endurance bikepacking race, being the first woman to finish at Picket Post racing 300 miles from Parker Canyon Lake. And then in 2018, I had the strongest race of my life, still to this day, when I arrived at Picket Post with the fourth fastest time ever by anyone, setting a new women's record by 11 hours, riding from Parker Canyon Lake to Picket Post in 51 hours. Some of these rides, plus rides with friends, personal solo rides, and walking and hiking on the trail, have all anchored me and my life story to this place and shown me what I'm capable of and connected me to the Arizona landscape. So in June, when the telegraph fire tore across the southern Arizona landscape, its cause, impact, and destruction broke my heart. The wildfire, which investigations revealed was most likely caused by Arizona Air National Guard fighter jets, engulfed 180,757 acres of the Sonoran Desert, threatening the towns of Superior and Globe and burning 18 miles of the AZT and the iconic Picket Post Mountain. Fire and drought are naturally occurring in the American Southwest, but climate researchers have identified that over the past 50 years, temperatures have risen at a rate parallel to the global temperature rise, while precipitation amounts have lowered. In contrast to prior, shorter periods of warming in the climate history of the Southwest, the warming that the region experienced during the past 50 years is presenting as warmer springs and earlier high summer temperatures with longer periods of drought between precipitation events. Joel Biederman, who works as a research hydrologist for the USDA's Southwest Watershed Research Center in Tucson and is a fan of the AZT, told me that the greatest changes in drought length have taken place in the desert Southwest. The average dry period between storms in the 1970s was 30 days, and now that has grown to about 45 days. As droughts worsen and fire season extends in duration and intensity, land managers in the Southwest face immense challenges for how to best manage wildfire season to mitigate risk to communities across the state, protect watersheds, prevent flooding, promote clean air, and preserve wildlife habitat. The increasingly common approach for land managers to enact blanket closures of national forests, restricting all access to those public lands to prevent catastrophic wildfires during peak season. As the telegraph fire raged on in June 2021, just this last summer, 4 of Arizona's 5 national forests closed, and most state lands closed as well. When the fire was at its worst, 60% of the AZT shut down, which I'm sure many of you experienced the impacts of. The impacts of these fires on trails are immeasurable. Destabilization of soils and increased erosion following storms are common. Fires also burn old-growth vegetation that keep invasive grasses and shrubs at bay. These invasive grasses and shrubs are then the first to take hold of the burned soil and quickly blanket the landscape with plants that are more prone to spreading fire than native vegetation, thus creating a vicious cycle. Burned trees fall by the thousands across trails, creating deadfall, hazardous and arduous expensive maintenance for trail organizations such as the ATA, and scars across the landscape eliminate shade for recreationalists and vital habitat for species. Here you can see invasive grasses growing in the Picket Post area this fall, just about 5 months after the telegraph fire, and burned signposts and trees along a section of trail after one of the fires from the summer before, and erosion that has resulted from the flooding that has interspersed these fires. This past fall, I returned to the Arizona Trail 300 race after a number of years of being away. This year, it followed the summer's historic monsoon. I ended up scratching after suffering from an allergic reaction to the pigweed that invaded the trail following the summer's monsoon. I also ran out of water, which was mostly poor planning, but ended up in a situation where I had to drink as horrific green tank water, which further highlighted the challenge of water resources in a warming climate and drying climate. In all, what I found while I was riding was that I was amazed by the impacts of fire, drought, and a changing climate on the trail, and that was far more concerning and captivating than my motivation to race as hard as I could. After I shared my story of battling overgrowth during the race with Matt, he shared that the ATA will invest $1 million worth of resources into the Arizona Trail this year, including cash and volunteer labor. These resources include efforts to combat the impacts of climate change and steward the trail and landscape for a changing climate. These climate efforts include installing remote rainwater collectors to create sustainable and reliable water sources for wildlife and trail users, as you can see with the photo on the right, installing bear boxes at trailheads and access points to be used as water cache locations, which I can personally say have become critical resources for being able to do a long through ride on the trail, as seen on the upper left, designing new segments of trail with climate change in mind, which will hopefully result in trails not eroding like the photo in center left, building trail to withstand erosion and dedicate trail restoration efforts post-fire and flooding, collaborating with the U.S. Forest Service and Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management in wildfire mitigation efforts, reducing the ATA's carbon footprint as an organization through thoughtful decision-making about their consumption, waste, use of fossil fuels, and employing minimal use practices, and supporting legislation to fight climate change for the long-term benefit of the trail and its associated resources. The ATA's significant local investment highlights a broader truth about climate change for me. On-the-ground community leaders are critical to the future of trails and the landscapes that provide clean air, clean water, and robust recreation economies. Without groups stewarding trails and without an abundance of financial support for these groups, we will lose trails to climate change. In Arizona, this truth has been made painfully obvious during the past year or two. After personally experiencing the impacts of drought, historic storms, and devastating wildfire, I'm taking a break from racing on the AZT. I still find the trail inspiring and fun to ride, and I can't wait to ride it again this spring when I come back to Arizona. But rather than race on it, I'm redirecting my energy and passion for the AZT to advocating for its health and future. And that's where you can help. A recent survey of Arizona Trail Association members, you all, identified the biggest threats to the trail as wildfires, drought, and climate change. Currently, Arizona Senator Kyrsten Sinema is one of 2 U.S. senators blocking the Build Back Better Act in a way that will result in climate provisions that are just not sufficient for making the level of difference that is needed to curb the U.S.'s contribution to global emissions and the global impacts of climate change. As Arizonans or ATA members, please write or call your elected officials personally to state your desire to see definitive and assertive climate action. If you are a constituent of Kyrsten Sinema, please urge her to take her opportunity to make a difference in the future of this planet, the Arizona landscape, and the Arizona Trail. I'm ending with a couple of resources for you to learn how to get in touch with your elected officials for Kyrsten Sinema's contact information. And this top link is to the just released this week advocacy toolbox that we made at Bikepacking Roots, where you can get tips for calling and writing, reaching out to your elected officials. Thank you.